Good morning, everyone. Hi, it's Stacy. This is Loving My Veteran, and we are walking in my shoes this morning. Hopefully, the internet connection is a little bit better. Connection is unstable. Of course, it is. Let's see if it'll kick through. Not, we'll do something a little different. All right, now it says we're in. So I'm Stacy. This is Loving My Veteran, and we are walking in my shoes this morning. Still having a little issue with some lighting stuff that we'll work on. I'm in North Carolina at my mom's, and just wanted to get make sure we're on. And this will be my office from home for the next week or so. She had surgery, so we're going to hang out with her. This has been a weird week because I'm off a day with the holiday weekend. So today is Tuesday. Tomorrow, don't forget, we do coffee conversation and collaboration with our friends at Behind the Service Podcast. We want to spend time with them. We do Wellness Wednesdays, and Thursday coming up, we have Let's Talk. I know you're in North Carolina, so we're totally opposite ends of North Carolina. I think we're closer, Sarah, when I'm in Georgia than we are now. I posted a question online. What's the one thing you wish you would have known going in? And we've had some amazing responses. So today I'm going to spend some time talking about over this week and maybe into next week, some of these answers. The Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde is what we're going to talk about today. The Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde is how come my veteran has a personality one time and then just like that, the light, there's a switch and we totally change in who we are. And it becomes instant in who they are. And how do you know which one you're talking to? And how do you know how to navigate through both of them? Because it is very hard. And I think had I have known that early on, things would be so much better. But I didn't. There's still times where I have a hard time working on that. So I want to go really kind of delve into this conversation because somebody sent me a message and said, how do you deal with that? You know, how do you do that? And so that's where I want to kind of go today is how do we do that? So again, we need to take a step back. And Carl says this to me a lot. You need to step out of the box or out of the situation and look at it from the outside. So I want to take a minute and step out of experienced. It's back to this unstableness again. I'm over this. There we go. We never experienced this, so we don't understand this. We don't comprehend this. We don't get this. Take a step out of your box for a minute. So step out of your box and let's look into from the outside. You're one person. Our veterans go into person mode, warfighter mode, right? I mean, based on their situation. So always think about that. If they're in a combat situation or at a heightened state of alert or focused on their mission or whatever, they go, good morning, Stephanie. They go from this mindset of what we would think of as the normal husband in mode where it's like we don't exist. And so it gets very frustrating. How do you navigate the two people? It is really like at times living with somebody with a total split personality. There are times that I feel like I live with somebody with this split personality. I will tell you right now, confronting them with it is never a good thing. Address the situation, the behaviors. I don't like it when you talk to me this way. I can say that. But if I go to him and say, look, I don't know who you are sometimes. It's like I'm living with two different people. That really sends him into orbit because then it becomes the person that we want to love and the defective person. And they want difficult sometimes. So we have to take that step out. So remember that switch can fire at any time because I said this early on last year when we first started this, when Jeremy and Carl were explaining it to me. It is like PTSD is like a movie that is always playing in their head. Is always playing in their head. So keep this mindset about you that this movie is always airing in their head. Their combat, their military training, whatever they have seen, whatever they have heard, whatever orders they have given, however they see the world and affecting them as that warfighter, it is always playing in their head. Most of the time, which most of us, if you really sit back and look at it, most of the time our veterans have really good days or really good moments or really, as we want to call, normal, to suppress that movie. Here we got to the unstable connection. Now we'll see how this works. There we go. I will go upstairs tomorrow and do it so we don't have this issue. But it is so they suppress this movie. They suppress this ongoing drama that they hear in the back of their head stays suppressed, where that movie just comes to the forefront. So you'll have it playing in the back of your mind down here. And then whatever goes on throughout the day, whether it's something they've seen, something they've heard, my hair's still on, something they've done, whatever, it will take this flat movie that they've suppressed, and then all of a sudden it comes here, and then it goes back down, and then it comes here, and then it goes back down. So what you're getting is when they're on this flat surface, you're at their normal, the normal that we like, that the forefront, and you go from this flat to this, and sometimes it stays long and sometimes it drops back down. Sometimes it stays up and sometimes it goes halfway down. So you get that mentality that is constantly playing. And as they suppress that movie, because the only way I can describe it is in a movie situation, that is suppressed in the back of their mind. And when something happens, to keep that pushed to the back. It is an active challenge to keep that movie pressed to the back of their head. So when you don't understand how oh, here's my normal person that I'm just having this great time with, right? And it's all going on and things are wonderful. And then all of a sudden this switch, as we want to call it, flips. That is that moment that movie that they've suppressed in the front. And so your normal conversation can just be going along great. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom. And you're like, what the hell did I do? You didn't do anything. You didn't do anything. That conscious decision they make that they struggle with every day. And you have to understand this is a constant struggle to keep it suppressed. It's a conscious decision almost. And this is one of the things that came back comment wise, is a lot of times we feel like we did something. We didn't do anything. Even if we're like, well, we may have triggered them. Yeah, something you said may have caused them to lose that focus, and that attention to honestly push it to the back may be gone, and it's come more to the front. So the way they react becomes different, acting like, and I hate to use normal, but the normal person, and then and that's why you get those two personality types that flip back and forth. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. It doesn't mean that you've done anything. It's just the way it plays out. So how do you deal with it? One, and more importantly, you have to be aware of that. Now, I mean, veterans may describe it as a different mode, but you know, it's always there. And so you've got to be ready for this, like, boom, in the forefront. And they do change their total modality, because if you're home and you're in your home space and your comfort space, and we do it without realizing it ourselves, when we are home and we are comfortable, we tend to be more relaxed than if, hey, Nakia, we tend to be more relaxed when we're in our own space. And so think about that. They're more on that, and all of that plays together. This unstable connection is driving me nuts. There we go. It all kind of plays together. So when something outside triggers or affects it, now this movie that they've consciously pushed down is more up in the front. So when they're in their own space and they're used to it, it's easier to navigate a lot of times. When they go somewhere different, it's harder to navigate. When there's things coming, it's hard to navigate through. You know, we're at my mom's and we love it here. And Carl is a lot more comfortable here than he was a year ago. So we're comfortable here, and he kind of, you know, knows that this is where around here is his safe environment. But the thing we also have here that we deal with is on one side of my mom's, these people rent their house, and the owners we adore, but they rent their house. So every week, that kind of plays a role.
Yeah, let the interrogations begin.
Yeah, he does. Like he says, it's let the interrogations begin. He wants to know who's in his space. Well, now we have this going on. And then, granted, that storm is a tropical storm, but while we're gone from our home, his safe space, our safe space, that storm's going to come over the top of where we live. So now we have, you know, Carl pushing the movie back, kind of being, instead of it being flat way down here like it is, whether he's thinking he's whatever doing, but he's adoring it. So now you've added this storm, and every time a new update comes in, and now they're saying, you know, more rain, and we've had so much rain and winds, that's kind of pushing it up. So he becomes more heightened and more aware, which doesn't just make him, where we become heightened and aware of a situation and we deal with that situation, they become heightened situation, but it also takes their whole intensity level up. So yeah, your movie that was playing flat down here, we have a little spike because we have a storm update. Now your movie isn't playing here because their mind is in a million different places. It's now here. It may not be here when they're totally triggered, but it is now gone from here to kind of up here. And so that's the only way I can describe it, where we kind of all relate to it. And how do you, so you have to be aware of that to be able to, how to interact that way. How do you interact that way? So there's lots of little things. I can usually walk in a room with Carl without him jumping, freaking out. I don't care especially at home, how into things he is. But if his movie isn't playing here and it's playing up here somewhere, and I walk into a room and he doesn't hear me or see me and really focused on something, he'll kind of jump for a minute. Doesn't get violent, just jumps for a minute, and then all of a sudden he realizes, oh, it's you, it's fine. When we're here, his heightened sense of awareness becomes up here, and it lasts longer. So that's one thing that you can do, and we do it all the time. Like if we're at home and we're in the kitchen together, or even here and we're in the kitchen together, if I step behind him, I always say, I'm behind you. I do it, and he's like, well, you don't have to tell me, but I do have to tell him that. I may not have to tell him that when his movie's playing. It takes that element of surprise out. When I talk about communication, it takes that element of surprise out. Can you still talk about things when that movie is floating? Yeah, you can, as long as they're not up here at true triggered moment. I'm stuck in my head moment. When they're stuck in their head moment, we think about triggers as being, I think, he says to me all the time, do you pay attention to me? And I'm like, yeah, I do. But not the attention that I need to sometimes. And so he's teaching me how to refocus on that attention.
How to see when I'm triggered.
How to see when he's triggered, and not that outburst triggered, but when he's mentally triggered and his mind is things. Your stress cup is only so big. Okay, so and everybody's stress cup is different. So whether your stress cup is a little teacup or whether it's one of them big jugs, it is what it is. And when you put all this stress into it,
5-gallon bucket,
and you don't take anything out, it overflows. Sometimes it becomes an explosion, and sometimes it's just lots of stuff overflowing out, right? And we keep stuff to the stress because we're not seeing that typical what people describe. Every book, every therapist, everybody says, well, when they trigger, they do this, they explode, they get this way. They don't always explode. Sometimes they're triggering and they're caught in their head. And I saw that the other day when he was really stuck in his looking for a bowl. It wasn't that he didn't know what he was doing. He was stuck. He couldn't get to that next step because his head was so overflowing. So it's not always this violent trigger that people associate with PTSD, because that part of the trigger and we can work through. We see it, we know it, we understand it. But when he's saying, are you paying attention to me? He really expects me, and we should try to see that all this outside, whereas an hour ago I could say something and it wouldn't set him off, and something has happened, whether it's literally, we're like I said, we're at the lake, and so they're working on a new boathouse, and you can hear the hammering in the background down the cove from us. He is aware of how many trucks come into that neighborhood because everything is a threat. So that he sees, which now takes that movie to here, and I don't pay attention to it because I'm just thinking, well, whatever. And then when I say something to him, like in even a normal conversation with him, okay, when I have a normal conversation with him, he will get shorter and snippier without even realizing it sometimes. And and so when you become, I hate this unstable connection thing. When you become, sorry, I don't know how well we're broadcasting here. And now it says it's unstable, and it only did it when you put it there. It only did it when you opened the door. That was weird. And your fuse gets shorter. So just keep remembering, as their stress bucket fills up, their fuse gets shorter. So it's not that you're causing anything necessarily you to cause them to snap. It is the situation that is going on. Thank you, Stephanie. It is the situation that's going on. And when you become more, I didn't mean to trigger you. What did I do? And Carl's like, you didn't do anything. I'm like, but yes, I did, because you're mad at me and you said. And he said, but you didn't do anything. I said, but you said. And when their fuse is shorter, again, remember what I said, step out of the box. I mean, I know he's got to be sitting over here smiling at me because, he's like, oh my God, the things I'm saying to her, she's listening to.
I'm looking at the weather over our house. I'm not even paying attention to you.
Is that when you step out, realize, now he's triggering. So when, or stressing, that level is filling up. Think of it as a PTSD bucket. It's starting to fill up what causes that movie to come. What happens is when I say something and he gives me a short, snippy answer, isn't because he's meaning to give me a short, snippy answer. It's because when you go into full-blown combat or you're in a full-blown active situation, you don't have time to talk about and sugarcoat shit. You just say, do that. It may be the weather over our house. It can be the guy building the deck down the new boathouse down the thing that he's hearing, and the hammering. It can be the trucks bringing the stuff in. He is so observant here. He knows when the mail guy comes in the neighborhood. Okay, literally, he is aware of all of that, and so that heightened sense of awareness means that he's not concentrating as much on pushing that movie that's in his head all the time down, and it's kind of coming up. So that means that our bucket's filling up, and that means that space of short with that. That's, you got to understand it in order to be able to deal with it. So do you walk on eggshells? No, you don't. But you also learn that you can't take everything personally. The shorter, snippier answers don't necessarily mean that they're short and snippy to you. It's they have so much information coming in, they're going to get the 2 words out that need to come out, and that's what it is. So don't take it per cheeseburger. Okay. It was late. I had grilled some burgers. I was starving, and I made cheeseburgers, and they were amazing. And so I ate part of my burger and went on about my business. And and Carl came out of the house and he said, "I'm glad you had cheese on that burger." I was like, "What? Where the heck come from?" That was random. And he said, "I'm glad that you got what you wanted." And I'm like, "Okay, that was random. So what did that mean? That I did not put enough cheese?" Now here I am overthinking. I didn't put enough cheese on your burger. This is not what you wanted. And so I'm like taking offense to it, right? And I'm like, this is crazy. All I did was fix me a freaking cheeseburger, and I grilled 2 for you, and I brought them downstairs so you could eat them whenever you wanted to. And I was really thinking I didn't even put them on the buns. Glad you had cheese on your burger, or did you get enough cheese?
Said it politely, not snippy and disgusting like that.
You did say it politely, but it was like 2 words. And it was like, I took offense to it. So he came out and said, "Glad you got cheese on your burger." And I took it like, "Glad you got cheese on that burger." And I'm like, what the hell? And that's how I was taking it. And I said to him, he said, "Well, it was just a snippet." And I'm like, "Well, can I hear the whole movie?" Because, again, me being the smart ass and setting a situation, I said, because if that's the trailer, I don't want to watch the whole movie. I mean, I literally said that. If that's the trailer, I don't want to watch the whole movie. Not realizing that when I took in the events of the day and the night, we had a horrible 4th of July fireworks issue here. The neighbor had already come by and said, "I'm going to shoot off more fireworks tonight." And
We're not even going to get back that he's just
we adore my mom, and we're not angry at all being here, but she just had surgery and can't do anything with her shoulder at all. So we're always listening to make sure, hey, does she need help getting up? We don't want her to fall, or we don't want her to push anything. So that total awareness is going on always, and because he is taking care of me and her. Then he takes us and is like, "Are you okay?" And then we have, so not thinking about all this stuff that overwhelmed him, I'm like mad about the way he asked about cheese on my burger. And he didn't mean it in a negative way at all. He was like, "Babe, where a normal, not in that stress bucket narrowing conversation, be like, babe, I'm glad you got to enjoy the cheeseburger you so wanted," which is exactly yourself out sometimes to look in. You have to be able to take yourself out sometimes to be able to look in. Now, I am learning to take myself out of the box and look in, but only after the situation evolves. Okay. So it's after we've had that moment that I can take myself out more. And that's how you start looking at this approaching. Yes, you can still say everything that's on your mind, and you should, as long as you don't come at them sideways. And I don't realize sometimes the way, again, depending on where his level is, some of the things I say come out sideways to him when I don't mean it that way, because I'm like, by this point, in a thing of each other. And so if his stress level goes up here and he says something snippy to me, my level is now here. So I say something snippy back, and he takes it as snippy, and now we're here. And then something else is said, and now it's like seesawing on the seesaw that's never getting any better. And eventually that seesaw is going to break. And that's where we're at. Okay. So that's where we're going. But learn to take that step out and understand for their behavior. No, I don't. No, I don't. We both hold each other accountable all the time. We don't make excuses for behavior. We don't make excuses for that behavior. But when you understand the process, it helps. And you have to be able to understand the process. A lot of times people will say, well, he pushes me away. Yes, he does. And that's okay sometimes, because sometimes their stress bucket is so full, they have to take something out. And they don't want to explode, and they know where they're going. Y'all, these people, they know where they're going. They may not be able to articulate it well, but they know. Carl has learned to say to me, and I don't always pay attention. And it used to be with signs. And then he's finally just come out and said the words, because I don't pick up on all the signs that he's showing. I'm getting better, but I don't pick up on all the signs that he's showing.
Sometimes I got to write it on a fly swatter and get in her back of the head.
You do. But I don't pick up on all the signs that he's showing. And now he'll say to me, I'm in my head. I need some space. Okay. And that is that clue to me that bucket is filling up and that movie is coming up, and he's got to. So don't give him any more to deal with right now. Don't add any stress to that. If the situation still needs to be discussed, you don't have to, unless it's life or death, you don't have to discuss it at the peak of the movie. You know, you go into watch a movie at a movie theater, what do they tell you? Silence your cell phones and pagers. They still say pagers, which is like the dumbest thing to me, but they tell you to silence your cell phones. You don't have a conversation in the movie theater. You don't do that. So don't necessarily think you're going to have a conversation with them when this movie that's been playing in the background is now sitting up here. You don't have to have that conversation at that moment. You can have that conversation when that moment comes down and they're playing the credits. People don't stand in a movie theater and not talk during the credits. They get up and the movie's over and they talk about the movie on their way out while the credits are still playing. Because when the movie's over in the theater, you leave and you don't miss the cool parts and the credits. So that is how that works. When you ask about that Jekyll and Hyde, that is the best description I can give you of that Jekyll and Hyde. How things can be normal 1 minute and then that switch flips. You don't know where their stress bucket is. And so you have to become aware that there is that stress bucket. You have to be aware that that movie may not PTSD trigger. It doesn't have to be that trigger that puts them into a moment. It can be they're thinking about this, so now the movie comes up. They're thinking about this, so now that movie comes up. They're thinking about this, this, and this, and now the movie comes up. Because combat veterans, people who have served in combat, people who are military, they look at even every possible outcome. We don't do that. As a typical person, we don't do that. They look at everything. What if let's talk about the guy that, that's sitting on, or the girl that is sitting on the shore side back in country that has got to be the one shipping stuff overseas. They think of every possible outcome. What if it doesn't get there in time? Who's going to die? To my crew's getting it there. What if they get there and they don't have the parts they need? So there's all these what ifs, and they're thinking about every single possible outcome, and not just not get there. What happens if we're flying them? What happens if that plane goes down? What happens if the weather comes up? What happens if they land in a sandstorm? What happens so they don't just think about the one, they think about every possible scenario. It's like their head always has a situation to go wrong.
We call it situational awareness.
Right. Every possible thing that could go wrong. And we had to have a written plan for it. Stable again. the same thing happens. Please reconnect this time so I can finish, because last time I just got cut off. There. The same thing happens. So that is always going on their head, and now you're at. And I think that we want to confuse, we think of triggers as just the single events, but sometimes overload also becomes a trigger that we're just not aware of when we're going through this. So I just wanted to put that out there today. There are a lot more on these topics. We're going to answer some more of these other questions. I hope this helped you get a better understanding of how the ups and downs go. Because like I said, you read the book says, oh, this will trigger him, this will trigger him, this will trigger him. Nothing tells you that a culmination of things that may not within themselves be bad at all, just increases their stress level, and how that navigates and how that keeps them from pushing conscious decision to push down some of the things that they keep suppressed, that don't set them into that. Is how we feel emotionally sometimes, and how we feel hurt emotionally, and how we're like, well, if he loves me, he won't. And it is not always that. Sometimes we take what we hear differently, but we're going to talk about a lot about that tomorrow. So I just wanted to tell y'all, have a blessed day. I hope this helps some. Again, don't forget that when evening, and then of course we have our Thursday Let's Talk. We will be doing it lakeside. Well, we'll probably be up on the top deck doing it because the internet's more stable. So I want everybody to have a blessed day. I'm gonna go grab another cup of coffee. I'm Stacy. This has been Walking in My Shoes. We are